How's it going? My name's Mike Squires, and this is the Couches Podcast, episode number 193. And my guest, record producer, studio engineer, Phil Eck. Phil is responsible for a large handful of my very favorite records. Um, and records that shaped my musical path, which might seem surprising to some people who think that that I was focused on hard rock and metal stuff, but this is not true. I was, different points in my life, but I am I love indie rock. I love rock music in all of its forms, and Phil played an important role in a lot of those bands. And he's got a cool story that I didn't know. I'd never heard many of these stories, and I got to start this conversation by apologizing to him for some bad behavior that I exhibited to him in the 1995 probably, while I was an asshole working behind the counter at a coffee shop. It wasn't even the worst thing I ever said to anyone there, which is embarrassing. Don't forget to be nice, you guys. It's important. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. I really, really, really enjoyed it. Um, if you are enjoying the Couchriffs podcast, please support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Couchriffs. That's how this happens. That's how these videos, the podcast. I could sit in my truck and record that on my phone, but all right, come here, Rose. Rosie couldn't sit on my lap while we did it in the truck. So, but it is what makes the cover song videos happen, and it is what is going to propel the next sort of phase of Couch Riffs and the evolution of Couch Riffs. So I thank everyone that supports Couch Riffs in all of its many forms, whether it's being a Patreon supporter or making a donation over there. There's donation links there at couchriffs.com, also on Instagram, or there's merch to buy, shirts, etc. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Also, thank you to Variety Coffee Roasters. VarietyCoffeeRoasters.com has an awesome coffee subscription service. I drink their coffee every single morning. And if you go over there, take a little survey, it'll help you pick out the best coffee on their menu for you. And then you can choose whether you want to get it delivered to you weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. Bi-weekly, for people who grew up in Granite Falls, that means every 2 weeks. Just kidding. I'm from Granite Falls, and I knew that. So, it's also the only place that you can get a Couchriffs coffee mug, which is killer. Duh. And they're $10. You can just go over there to varietycoffeeroasters.com. $10, and it's on its way to you. Or if you add a mug to your coffee to your shopping cart and buy 2 bags of coffee, just use the code CouchRiffs, one word, at checkout, and you get your coffee mug for free, and that's fucking awesome. So, thank you, Variety Coffee Roasters. You guys kick ass. I love you. Also, thank you to River City Guitars in Spokane, Washington. Every day is a buying day at River City Guitars. If you are sitting on a vintage or cool, boutique-y sort of whatever used piece of music equipment, doesn't even have to be a guitar. It can be anything. Give them a shout. sales.rivercityguitars@gmail.com. Tell them I sent you. They are like family to me, and they're going to treat you right. I wouldn't send you anywhere. I wouldn't go myself. All right? So, thank you, River City Guitars. Without further ado, we are going to continue on to the podcast conversation. Thank you for watching, reviewing, listening, commenting, sharing. Don't forget the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. It's great. Imagine how great it would be if everyone treated each other the way that they expect to be treated. The world would be a fucking marvelous place. A more marvelous place. The world is marvelous. I'm marveled by it every day.
Hello, can you hear me?
Welcome to the party.
Hello, my squires. My goodness,
How are you? I'll
I'm
put on
good.
I'll put on a button-up shirt for you.
Well, so did I.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're always smartly dressed, and so I was like, I can't wear a hoodie.
Well, that's true, but
Uh,
thank you.
I mean, I feel like it's true, so Phil, it's my truth.
Ah, I like your truth.
How you doing?
Man, I'm good. Yeah. Sorry we had to cancel this 500 times to be able to do this.
That's okay. Here's the thing. I've been wondering how this would be great, just straight out of the gate.
Yeah.
Because do you remember
Mm.
where we met?
I think I remember. Yes. I think it was at Lighthouse Coffee.
God, I was hoping that you'd forgotten. Do
No,
you
man.
remember what a prick I was?
I remember when you're not still a prick.
I mean, I used to be a prick. I still am a
Okay.
prick, but I also used to be a prick.
I guess I don't really remember that now. Were you good to
Ah,
me?
well, I mean, I've been trying to figure out. I've publicly apologized to you, but just not to you,
Oh, I see.
because I've talked about some of my past behavior,
uh, I guess
and
at Lighthouse you were a dick to me.
yeah, well, it was just like a socially uncomfortable moment. You were a regular customer. You're always very well
As I lived up the
behaved,
street.
very polite. You
Thank
were
you.
very well behaved, very smartly dressed, and I was like, this fucking asshole, this guy.
Yeah, what a
He's
dick.
in he's in I bet you anything. He's in one of these popular bands
Right.
that I like, but I also resent because I'm not doing anything.
Right. And so
And I remember you walked in one day and I was like, "So, what's what stupid indie rock band are you in?" And and it was like obviously I caught you way off guard and you were just like, "Oh, I don't really play music anymore. I make records now. I've been working on making records." And I was
yeah.
like, "Oh, you a fancy record producer?" And you were like, "I mean, I don't know how fancy I am, but I just make records." And I was like, "What's your name, Mr. Fancy Record Producer?" And you told me, and I was like, I shrunk. Like I could have fit inside my tip jar at that moment
Right.
because
I loosely remember this conversation now that you bring it up.
at
Now,
that moment I was like, uh, you know, and you probably get this a lot, but There's Nothing Wrong with Love was like one of my favorite records, top 10 record for me.
cool.
And I was just like, oh, God, I'm such a prick. I can't, this is a lesson. I have to remember this lesson forever.
Right. What year would that have been?
That would have been before I was in a regular, like, in a band that was actually getting
Like
okay
shows.
gigs.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
95 or 96.
Yeah, kind of what I was trying to remember as well, because I had lived at that house up the street from Lighthouse from 93 to 2000.
No.
Um, so yeah, when that place first opened, I was like a regular because oh, it's a good coffee shop right down the street. So I remember meeting you. I now I guess I sort of remember this conversation, but I took no offense to it just because I don't know. Man,
Because
really,
a lot of musicians are pricks.
well, just no, not even not. I wouldn't say that. I just think there's a funny. Are you from Seattle?
I'm from the Northwest.
Right. Me too. So there's that kind of Northwest and specifically Seattle kind of, you know, if I'm not successful, I'm going to be a little bit of a hater just because, which is just a crappy Seattle thing, Northwest thing.
Right.
Less. I don't know if it's less or more now, but it was pretty. Like when in those days, man, it was kind of gnarly.
It
And that,
was super gnarly.
yeah, and I didn't take any, and you were gnarly at that moment that I remember, but yeah, man, that kind of Seattle, kind of hater vibe just because you're not doing it yourself as opposed to being stoked that somebody is nice and doing a good job on their own
Right.
world is just a little bit of a bummer, that cold shoulder Seattle thing. But you know, So I didn't take any offense.
What do you?
Maybe I was used to it, Mike.
Well, I wanted to make sure to make a point to
Okay.
actually apologize to you.
Well, yeah, apology accepted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there was a very weird thing that I inherited from
Yeah,
that time of living in Seattle, where it was like, you can't try too hard, man. You got to be
yeah,
really good. You
yeah,
can't try too hard.
yeah, yeah. Or and if you show that you're trying hard, you're a total prick, or you're a sellout, or you're whatever the hell that people looked at you as. Yeah, that's still around in the Northwest area, and unfortunately still around in music world and around here. But
Does it
man, it's
still
still,
exist?
I think it kind of still exists. Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
will be honest with that. I've been very lucky to be successful in this city, and
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody saying kind words as you said right there. But I don't really make much music from this town anymore. This town isn't where the artists I work with are based pretty much at all, or way less than they have ever been. So it's a good place to live. My wife's from here. She's, our son's born here. And it's always been a place that I can make cool records and not have to deal with that aspect of the city. And so I feel like I'm kind of getting the best of those both worlds where it's still, I bought my house a long time ago. It's an insanely expensive city, but I don't really exist in that world right now.
Are you still in the city, or did you?
Yeah, Columbia City, South Seattle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought maybe you became one of the island people for some reason.
I'm from Bremerton.
Oh,
So,
you are.
yeah, I'm born in Seattle, but grew up in Bremerton, moved right here out of high school. So I've been here since 90.
Was your
Um,
dad a Navy guy?
my dad was not a Navy guy. My dad was an OBGYN. So he worked as an obstetrician gynecologist
Fancy
delivering babies.
doctor?
My dad was a doctor, yeah. And I don't know the full story other than he graduated pretty uh, good honors, I guess, in from University of Washington Medicine.
Uh-huh.
And I think maybe one of his colleagues or schoolmates was either from Bremerton area or just they wanted to start a practice, and that was a cheap place to do it. And they actually moved out to Silverdale, which is way out in the middle of nowhere, in 1970 or 71 when he started his practice out there. Maybe even earlier. I'm not exactly sure when he started, but around the early 70s. And I think it's very fortuitous for him because he wasn't in the military, every civilian woman went to my dad.
Well, I thought
And
maybe you were going to say he was a veterinary OBGYN.
yeah, yeah, no, no,
There would be
no. He just,
tremendous amount of work out there.
yeah. No, he just became a civilian doctor over there, and until he passed away. He passed away in 2004. But yeah, so we grew up over there, not being in the military. Really weird place to grow up and be a civilian kid that just kind of, hey, I'm not, in this weird clique of most of the people that were there, which made it kind of maybe boring and maybe kind of fun because we were in punk bands and stoner kids and just kind of ran in our own weird bizarro circle of whatever.
There was music happening over there, yeah?
Yeah, there's a lot of bands, and there is a venue, Natasha's, that
Right.
was I guess around the teen dance ordinance of Seattle when everything was shut down. There was no, or really hard to do all ages shows in Seattle proper. A lot of the shows spilled out to the skirts and Tacoma Community World Theater and stuff like that, and Natasha's in Bremerton had lots of shows. So I saw a bunch of big punk rock shows and local bands and friends bands and stuff like that played pretty regularly there.
Was was punk rock your entry point into music, or were you into like Foreigner and Kiss and Ted
Yeah,
Nugent before that?
Foreigner, Kiss, Van Halen, AC/DC, suburban rock and roll from 76 on, I guess, until punk
KZOK
rock.
music. You were listening. You were rocking the KZOK and the KSW.
100%. Yeah,
Oh.
had me and my older brother were Ace Frehley, both of us, 3 years in a row. We had the official Kiss makeup kits. I was a suburban rock kid, and it wasn't until yeah, probably middle '80s when I even knew exactly what punk rock was or goth or anything other than just rock and roll.
It was
And
kind of scary to me as a suburban kid. Was it scary to you when you'd see the news reports like punker rockers pogo dancing and
yeah,
harming others, leaving venues?
yeah, smashing into each other with these spikes on their arms and whatever. Oh yeah,
Terrifying.
the whole thing was terrifying. Growing up in Bremerton, you know, the outside world was terrifying because you're in this military town and it's the Cold War and nuclear bombs are right down the road and Bangor submarine base, and you're just terrified of everything. And so all I could think to do was get out of Bremerton. So as fast as I could, I blazed as fast as I could out of Bremerton.
Being a
So
Cold War kid was gnarly. I hated
yeah,
it.
man, it
I
was
had
terrifying.
nightmares about that shit forever, and I didn't even live in a military town.
Yeah. Now, do you remember the TV show The Day After, the like miniseries The Day After?
It fucked me
Oh,
up. I cursed my mother for letting me watch that
shit.
show.
Yeah, I wish I had. It terrified the fuck out of me.
Have you watched it as an adult though?
No, I'm sure it's
It's way
absolutely
less scary than The Walking Dead, and I laugh at
comical. Yeah, yeah, comical bullshit. But this living in Bremerton, I mean, there's the Keyport nuclear, was it nuclear warhead base or whatever the hell it's over there, and then Puget Sound Naval Shipyard and Bangor submarine base, literally a triangle. We live right in the middle of that. We just and probably rightly so. If there was a nuclear war, we would be decimated. So we are just so scared of it. And Navy guys weren't the coolest to us, of long haired dumb kids that listen
Are you
to
trying to tell me that the sailors weren't really cool?
the
Young
real sailors were not cool to us as kids. So it was a funny place to grow up, but it was good for my father, and my folks divorced when I was pretty young, but it was boring, but in a lot of ways kind of I don't know. I think because we weren't, my group of friends were the minority of the social groups in the area, and my father was in the minority in a lot of ways of his business world. I think it made our little funny clique of buddies and friends just kind of weird, eclectic guys that were really into a lot of different music and really stoked on kind of any kind of form of musical entertainment that could come our way. I think broaden our horizons more than the city and the time frame, the years
right.
allowed. So
Let me ask you this. Let me continue the question that I asked you back at the lighthouse.
yeah,
When you were playing music,
yeah,
what instrument were you playing?
guitar,
You were
guitar.
playing guitar.
Yeah, I still play guitar, not much, but I still play. I play with people, and I show people stuff in the studio all the time. I still own my own gear. I don't, I probably was a better guitar player when I was 18 than I am now, just because I play a hell of a lot more.
I probably
But,
was too.
I still own a lot of stuff, and I still play, you know, not by any means professionally or anything like that, but I still jam around on my stuff, and certainly in the studio we'll show parts or discuss parts with players, or I prefer the musicians play on the records I produce. I don't want it to sound like me playing it. I want it to sound like you playing it. But I definitely would work on those parts in the studio with guitar players and stuff like that. So
You ever think about making a
music,
record of your own?
yeah, I thought about it many times. Yeah, I just never, for whatever reason, either the time didn't allow or the interest would come and go. I think that making records is something that I've always loved doing, didn't plan on doing, but just kind of got me out of Bremerton. I went to the Art Institute, which was terrible, but it just was a way for me to kind of go, well, I'll just go do this. And if it doesn't
Right.
work out, what do I care? But it took off in this cool, fun way. So it just became, that was the exciting thing, was the hands and knees, working in the trenches on people's music became that part of writing, or that kind of production, that kind of involvement became my bands, as it were, or my
I don't,
music.
I don't want to, spoiler alert, but there's a lot less money in being a musician.
Really? Oh,
I mean, I know it doesn't look that way from the
yeah, yeah. Look at all the axes you got, dude. You got so many. I can count a lot of axes back there.
I mean, one for almost all of, all my seven fingers.
There you go. But yeah, no, I don't know, man. I still, yeah, I often go through these waves of wanting to either playing more and be more excited by it, or thinking about, weird, I'll play something on guitar, little lick or whatever that I came up with 20 years ago, and somebody in the studio goes, what's that? That's really cool. I'm like, oh, I guess it is kind of cool. And I'll dick around with this more, and that will kind of accept me. And then maybe I'll get all of a sudden make a record that I'll be working on for 3 months or something like that, and I forget about it.
Do you have
Whatever.
any co-writes on records that you've worked on because
Um,
of that?
I have No, well, not officially. Back in the early days, I definitely had some stuff with. Do you remember that band Gnome?
Yeah.
Gon. Yeah, anyways, I did. Ron, the bass player, was my roommate.
Were
In the
they were they a South End or like a Port Orchard kind of band?
No, they were a Seattle band. This is when I lived in Seattle,
Oh,
and they were on CZ. And I would play guitar in our living room all the time. And Ron one time liked this one thing and brought it to their band. So I actually got credit for 2 songs with those guys officially. But I've done more. It's funny, you don't get credited as much as a co-write unless you are seriously, that's how you're going into the process. Like, I'm
right.
going to sit down with these guys and co-write songs with them. But I had done songwriting publishing in lieu of money upfront, based on that writing process or based on that collaborative process. And certainly with just royalties in general, you could kind of say, hey, we're agreeing that you are a part of this, whether you're called a writer or not, you get these royalty based on that.
Right.
So not officially, but yes, in some ways. So
So when you made the choice as a what 18-year-old right out of high school to go to the Art
19,
Institute,
yeah, exactly.
um, did you have a 4 track and you were recording your own
Yeah,
bands, or was it just like,
yeah, yeah. I was a part of that whole kind of world of everybody had a 4 track and help people or played on some dumb stuff with some people, and so I knew that part of it was interesting to me, but besides that, I had no true desire to be a record producer or even an engineer. I just thought, oh, recording school. And I think the biggest thing for me and why I decided to even dive into this aspect of it was, as growing out of suburban rock and roll into thrash metal and Slayer and Metallica, and then the Cure and the Smiths and Joy Division and whatever, my expansive, well, oh, there's a whole lot of different music out there. Local music I liked, thought was cool, but there was nothing that really blew me away early on. I thought only really cool music happens in San Francisco, LA, London, New York. Not
right,
really cool music. There's not people making music, but it wasn't until friends in high school, maybe 10th grade, I guess, turned me on to sub pop stuff. I was like, oh, cool stuff that I was fucking into. I love that early shit. It really was, oh, that's exciting. Seattle's doing cool stuff. I'll figure what that is. And so I would go, all my money I would make at, this pizza place I worked at. I'd go to Fallout and Orpheum and Time Travelers and just absorb as much as I could of local and I guess like SST or Sub Pop or whatever the hell was going on that I thought was cool. And I go home and listen to this Devour. Like, I was so stoked on it. Like, wow, this is everything I'm into in one genre or whatever music. And then this one dude, Jack Endino, for the most part, is recording almost all these records on Sub Pop right across the way and ferry ride away in Seattle. That was really exciting to me. And so that made me go, well, fuck, I'll just try this random weird thing that my brother's buddy went to the Arts Institute, and I was like, well, I got a college fund. I guess I'll try that out.
so
So
what year was that you started going to
88,
88?
87, 87, 88, when it's like the first kind of early sub pop shit that I heard. Thereabouts, I probably maybe 89, but thereabouts.
When did you go to the Art Institute? That was 88?
I was in, no, I went to 90 and right that I graduated high school in 1990, and then October 1990 I went to the Art Institute.
So
So I
we're
moved.
the same age. The Rocket was huge to me,
Yeah, yeah,
and I had a couple of school field trips where we went and saw like international films, and I grew
nice.
up in a really
Where'd
tiny
you grow up?
Granite Falls.
Oh yeah,
You know where
yeah.
that is?
I do know where that is.
I was in the advanced placement English class, and
There you
my
are.
amazing English teacher would take us to see international films and musicals
Wow,
and like
that's cool.
cultural, yeah, very cool.
Wow.
So I discovered Orpheum on one of these
Yeah.
trips, and
Yeah.
I started going down there once a month.
Yeah, man.
That part
Same.
was
That's what I would
very,
do.
very important because I
Yeah.
could find I was going to budget tapes and records that they were all over the Northwest, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In Mary, I mean, I would have to take the bus to go get the Rocket magazine,
Yeah.
or I got a car, and I would do it just to get it. It was like
Absolutely.
that's
It was
how it
cool.
happened before the internet, right?
100%. And but yeah, I think that same with me, that the culture of what the big city of Seattle, you know, doing things that I was like, this is actually things that I think are cool. And then, which had not really been the case as much up until that point, was right across the water, this kind of beacon in the night, big city of Seattle. And then just like what I thought were like really, what seemed like really cool people, like I didn't know any of these people, like people in bands or whatever, making these records, like, oh, this is exciting. So I'll at least dive into something that I think is exciting, that I'm genuinely stoked on, and just see what happens. And that's how that went.
So, did you finish the course at Art Institute?
Yeah, I
You
did.
did. Good for
Yeah.
you.
Oh no,
Hey,
thank you. got me really far. Yeah,
it
I
did.
did. I honestly, because I went there, I hated the school. I didn't have, there was no electives at the time I went there. You took the whole 6-quarter course, and that's it. You got this many days in the studio, which is very few. I think 2 4-hour days or something a week in the studio, and the rest was salesmanship and advertising and all these other things that they made you feel like you were some well-rounded person in the music business, which maybe that was good for somebody, but I really hated it. So I was going to quit. And, you know, one of the teachers, this guy, Tom Dyer, who was the main music guy, he had a label called Green Monkey Records. Mm-hmm. And he put out Green Pajamas and things of that nature. You know, so that was his personal label. And he was also a teacher at the school as an audio teacher. And I went to him. He's kind of like the head of the audio department, I guess. But I don't want to do this, man. I don't get it. Like, I only like this one thing, and I don't feel like I'm getting much of that one thing. And he was like, look, man, if you don't have to pay for this yourself, which some kids were, which was really sad, but it was expensive. He's like, just finish it. And I think, you know, me and the other audio teachers just really like you and think you could do this and think you could actually be a recording engineer or a record producer or whatever you decide to do. So we'll kind of take you under our wing, and they let me work with them on their own projects after class on weekends. I had the keys to the place. I would show up before anybody and go into the studio at this class and set up microphones and set the board up and maybe get the tape machine all ready to go. And so I did that for more than half of the school that was of the program. And
moving forward in your career, did you ever employ this tactic more? Like, I'm thinking about quitting, or I'm thinking about leaving, and just like have people double down for you.
Yeah. No, you're not. We're going to give you more time and more money and more points and everything's the records. The gold records going to be this big. And come on. No, it was really sweet of him.
That's amazing.
It was amazing, and it was really nice. But also, there were some kids that I did really like at the school that didn't get that opportunity, and I felt kind of bad. But because of that, because I was able to work with these guys on their own projects, I learned a lot. I learned how to be a fly on the wall. I learned how to just absorb way more how really it goes to, you know, man, you're in the studio and the bass player is fucking up over and over again. The guitar player wants to murder him. And how do you deal with that tension? And I didn't know how that worked until I watched it happen in front of me and have teachers who were always super polite and nice kind of lose their shit and go, shut the fuck down and blah, blah, blah. This is how we, you know, deal with it however they need to deal with it. I learned a lot from that. And then by I guess my third quarter, you could go to a studio and get credit for extracurricular stuff. And Tom also said, you should work you should work with Jack and Dino. And I was like, yeah, right. And he's like, no, you know, Reciprocal Recording had just closed. Rich Hinkland was an engineer who took it over and started calling it word of mouth, and they're going to need some hands over there. And I know Jack is still associated with that place, so you should just go down there. So I did. And they're just like, hey, long-haired weird dude, what's going on? and they're really nice. And Rich let me kind of hang out and watch him do stuff. And Jack called me up and said, hey, you want to come to the studio? And whatever. And I just assisted him and went from there. And I worked with him on like Super Suckers records. And
was that the first thing you worked on?
With him, it was the Super Suckers Smoke of Hell, their first record on Sub Pop. And it was just amazing to me. Like, holy shit, a year into this thing, I'm at the studio where all these records that made me want to do this are made at with the main guy. And Rich Hinkland was also amazing as well. But I was like, Jack and Dino, oh my God, the grunge producer, the guy who made Nirvana, Bleach, and Soundgarden, and Touch Me I'm Sick, and all these things.
Right.
2 years prior or whatever, I was blown away by this. I hung out and learned and watched, and yeah, because I had been, I'm sorry about that. Because I have been,
Fancy in-ears in.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I had been with those teachers, I knew how to deal with it a bit and not say shit and just
Yeah.
watch and plug in microphones and just sit there and don't say anything and just learn. So it was cool.
We're both old now, right? I'll be
Yeah,
50 in December. Are you 50 yet?
I'm 50. Yeah, just
You're
July
50.
9th. I turned 50.
You just turned 50?
July 9th.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Yep.
Uh, we're old now. We're,
We're officially old guys.
50 is the new 45 though. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I often, I catch myself saying, well, young people don't this or that anymore. But I honestly, I don't know what young people anything. But you're around young people more than I am. Um, do young people still have because of all the information that you get from the internet and social media, we didn't have any of those luxuries as kids. Are they still patient to learn in person from old people?
Um, yes, and no. I mean, I think that the kind of millennial kind of holier than thou kid comes around,
Sure.
every now and again, and doesn't, I'm the badass, and my parents have always told me I'm a badass, and I'm just going to do this thing and pretend like I care if you like it or not. Those guys come around, but I think most kids, when they're in a studio with a producer, that they like that producer, they like the records I've done, they understand what we're doing this for. They're maybe on a label, bigger indie label, or maybe on a major label, or they got the funds to fund it themselves, however that is. And we're at that point, then I think there's more understanding to be. Yeah, I'm here to be guided, and I'm here to understand what you're saying and why you're saying it in ways that I never thought before.
Right.
I didn't realize I've been rushing the way I've always been rushing. I didn't realize I hold my hand incorrectly and I'm not muting that bottom string just because I'm just rocking out, and now I'm under the microscope and I've never thought about it. Oh shit, okay, I know I shouldn't be letting that B string ring across the whole song. I just never really heard it before, but now I can hear it clearly. Oh, I have to adjust. He's telling me I should adjust. That makes sense. That kind of guidance, just even simple stuff like that, yeah, those kids are stoked to hear that and stoked to be a part of that, and want that, ultimately want that.
I record myself so much
Yeah, yeah,
for these stupid fucking cover songs that I'm making.
yeah, yeah,
And I have to listen, and I'll be like, I'll get to the end of a take because they're all one take performances. They're
yeah,
not lip syncs.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I
You're
get to
going.
the end and I'm like, I fucking nailed that. And I have to listen back critically then.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
I have to have a lot of honest conversations with myself
yeah,
like, that normally someone else, I would rely on someone else.
yeah, yeah. I think that to be able to do that consistently is very, it great. It helps you be a better musician. But kids
Hope
don't
so.
do that. They never do. Well, I mean, I think it does. But kids don't do that really. When they record themselves, they'll just, the downside of being able to record themselves all the time, if you're a younger person in your 20s, whatever, is that you don't have to learn technique as much. You don't have to learn, uh, uh, you don't have to be hard on yourself. You can just, as a lot of kids, I get demos sent to me often. And back in the, God, 90s and early 2000s, you saw a band play before you made a record with them. They usually came on tour even before they even made a record. But
Yeah.
now bands can, record themselves to the nth degree, send it around in the world, and get signed to major labels before anybody's really seen them. Or, maybe not that extreme, but you know what I mean. And I get stuff, and because most of the stuff is not from Seattle or the Northwest that I'm working on, I just kind of have to have these little bit of blind faith that they actually know what they're doing and that they can actually perform these things. And yeah, sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. But when you get in the studio, you have to say, look, I don't really care how you made your demos. I don't want to repeat that. I'm looking to go past that. And this is what I think we should do to go past that. I don't want to loop your things just to loop it. I want you to perform it. And if we need to loop it, I'm not against looping things. I'm not against editing things if it's better that way, or if it just, but I want you to perform it. And I think you'll feel better about your ownership of your own music, and it shows, and it's funner. You'll have a better time doing it. And ultimately it's just a lot faster if you just play it cooler than me trying to make it sound like you played it cooler by editing that, whatever that is. It's never the same. And I think presented that way as a cool artistic challenge, most kids are like pretty stoked. They were like, okay, I'm up to this.
I think the more, pardon my French, the more you have to finger fuck something,
Yeah,
the worse off you are.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's never better.
No.
I mean, you can make things, you can do a hell of a lot. You can do
Let me ask you
immensely
this.
powerful things.
You learned how to record on tape machines
100%.
because you're old.
Yeah.
Yeah. And were you resistant of... In 1990, there was a version of digital recording, right? It was
digital tape. Yeah, big 3/4 inch 40-track Sony digital tape machines and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But there wasn't hard drive recording at that time.
Not readily available to anybody you ever saw. I'm sure there was something in the works for maybe the film industry, possibly, but nothing
what
around.
Was Pro Tools called before it was called Pro? It had another name, right? Sin Digger.
I don't know.
It had.
I was a later. Like, long story short, I was a later adopter to Pro Tools, and not because I don't give two fucks about it being digital and sampled, and I don't care about it being a continuous waveform and all it's just ones and zeros. That's, I don't care. It just had to sound cool. And for me, I mean, like 2004 or 5 is when I really started using it. And that's
right.
4 or 5 years way past most of my contemporaries. So it just didn't sound good to me. And so I stayed away from it for quite a long time. And now it sounds great, and tape machines are a pain in the ass, and, tape's expensive and whatever. And, I've had records from large bands that did really well, like Fleet Foxes, and, where half the record had, there's tape on it, but majority of it's digital. And some songs are all digital. I dare anybody to tell me which one's which.
Right.
So
when was the last time you did a whole record on tape?
Oof, that's a good question. I don't know. I bet, man, I don't know. I think the last time I did majority tape was probably the last Built to Spill record I did, which was Ancient Melodies of the Future, which was 2000. And I think that was probably, and we used to sync tape machines together. So we would time code tape machines together because we could. Mm-hmm. Or we would time code together tape machines with ADATs.
Right.
Which was not good, but we did it because I was like a cheap, easy thing. You just needed more tracks because I don't know if you listened to Built to Spill before, but there's a lot of guitars on that stuff.
A lot of guitars.
So we just need the tracks. But primarily all of it was, it definitely wasn't computer digital, but it might have had some digital tracks from ADAT or D88 or something like that, or D80.
Tell me that Doug likes the sound of guitars.
Yeah, he does lots. Yeah, as do I. But yeah, it was around then, maybe a little bit later than that, but what it would have been, maybe Wasabi 5, which would have been maybe a year later. So around 2002, would be the last time I did a full album on tape.
Was it a hard transition learning the new format, like the interface?
No, it's not really, because it's still pretty linear, and you don't have to do all the bells and whistles. It's just kind of a way to record things back in and out, So I think because I wasn't really either didn't know how to, or just wasn't interested in doing like playlists, and I wasn't doing a whole hell of a lot of comping of stuff, so I wasn't really even using it as an editor. I was using it as a hard disk recorder, as it were, and I would still like punch in. Like I remember some kids going, you don't have to punch. You can hit record anywhere you want, just drag it across. I'm like, I knew that.
Shut up, kid.
Shut up, kid. Sounds good. I know I'm doing over here.
You're a little out of tune. Your G string's a little out of tune.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. You watch over there.
I love that. Hey, why don't you check your tuning?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Check your tuning. I say check your tuning 1,000 times a day.
Yeah, no, that's
goddamn thing. I like to record. Well, yeah, I like to record effects through amps. I don't like to add them on later. So I like, if you're going to have a ton of reverb on the guitar solo, we're recording it through the amp, whether from the reverb on the amp or through a pedal or delay or anything else. I don't usually add too many effects later. So there's nothing worse than your G string being a little out of tune, and then it's out of tune again, and out of tune again, and out of tune again, and out of tune again. And then you add a double of that, and then those are out of tune. You're like, oh no, like this beating horribleness after the delays at the end.
What, did you record the early Modest Mouse stuff?
Yeah.
Did you ask Isaac to check his tuning?
All the time. It didn't help though.
I
He had such broken guitars. You know, he had those whatever Kramers with the Floyd
They're
Rose that
so
he
incredible.
didn't have the locking nut. He'd bend up on the back, but yeah, I don't think it really it really
I
mattered.
only recently heard that Isaac was a big Drive Like Jehu fan,
Huh. I didn't know that.
and all of a sudden, like a lot of his guitar
Playing that.
style made
Yeah.
sense to me because when that first single came out, I was like, "This is crazy. This
Yeah,
is
yeah,
like this is
yeah,
really cool, and I love this."
yeah, yeah. I'm the same. I remember watching him. Me and Doug and Chris Takino, who ran Up Records, and they had a show at fuck, what was that place up with the laundromat and had shows in
Sit and spin.
Sit and Spin, yeah, Sit and Spin.
Yeah.
So we were at Sit and Spin, and we're watching them play, and me and Doug are just like losing our fucking mind, like tune your fucking guitars, you guys, god damn it, like this is the worst excruciating thing ever. And I remember Isaac looking over at Eric and goes, "Hey, give me your A," which he probably didn't even know what that meant. And then they started, and it was like ding dong. It's like, and then okay, kept playing, but no, stop. I remember Chris Takino after the show saying, "I'm buying you guys like whatever rack mount, stroke style tuners, like tuners for your stage. And if you don't use them, you're not on my label anymore." I don't know how serious he was, but I thought that was pretty great because they were excruciating at that particular moment. But I loved that band. I still like that band a lot. But those early days of that band just being completely like, I thought exciting as fuck, really unique, watching them play, kind of bizarrely jamming the way they would do that, the kind of dance thing that they did in their jams, and just the weirdness of that band was so cool to me. And I loved them. And Jeremiah, the drummer, used to live in an apartment, mother-in-law apartment in a house I had in Finney Ridge, and they were just around me all the time. And I still to this day adore those kids. But yeah, those early days of that band, watching this weird kid with this funny sunken chest and his lisp and his this kind of blow your mind with some pretty amazing poetry in his lyrics, and then cool fucking melodies and truly unique, bizarre guitar playing with the crazy bass player, great lines, and Jeremiah's a great drummer. I was pretty smitten by that band. So they were pretty fun.
I think they're still making art music,
Guys, they had a new record out like this year. They're on tour right now.
and
Which, you
it's
know,
cool. It's art.
yeah, that's what he does. They take forever between their records these days. He's had the success to allow him to do so. I'm sure his label and management would wish it was faster, but he does what he does. And I don't think anybody thought in 2021 we'd be talking about Modest Mouse. In 1995 they look like they're going to blow up. Like implode. I mean, not like blow up as a big band, but just like disintegrate within their arguments. But they made it through this whole thing and became a big band, a warranted big band, which is cool. Right. Yeah.
Are there do you have a favorite record that you've made? One that you feel closest to, like?
I don't know. I don't listen to them much after making them. After they're mastered, I don't really listen to them a whole lot. So
you have an emotional attachment to.
Yeah, I guess my point being is like I don't know them. Sometimes I'll hear them like, "Oh, that's cool. I really like that," or "Oh, fuck, I forgot that we did that." I think Nothing Wrong with Love, because it was such a really important time for me and for Doug. It just we just became really, really, really good friends, and for both of us, it was kind of like, oh shit, they were off to the races kind of thing. Like it took off, and it changed both of our lives completely. And because it was just me and him making that record, the bass and drums were done in 2 days, maybe 3, and then those guys were gone. So it was just me and Doug, and I never had that much time in the studio before. I never had that luxury of like having a whole bunch of different amps or even a budget to rent amps from somebody else. And, be able to have different textures and try different guitars. I never even seen that before. You just plugged in and you recorded. So to have like what I thought was total luxury of time, which is maybe 2 weeks, which is a long time in 1994 to make a record. Um,
Sure.
that was
Were
probably
they long days? Were you guys in 14
probably
straight days?
probably because
Yeah.
I that's yeah probably. I mean, we worked every day in a row. I mean, he went back to Boise and then he came back once, and I can't exactly remember why we did that, but he also had just had his first child, so maybe that was what it was. But yeah, we worked probably, I bet we worked 15-hour days or more, just because I was 22 and he was
Where did you
24.
record that at?
Hall of Justice, John Stew's place, the
Oh
old
yeah.
building. Yeah,
Uh,
that's where I first learned to record anyway,
I've
like
recorded
outside
a
of school.
handful of times in there, and
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
got a good vibe. Weird
yeah,
room.
yeah. It's different now. I don't know if you've seen it in a long time.
I
Like,
haven't been in there since Chris redid it.
yeah, so it doesn't look anything like it anymore. It's kind of fancy and same relative. I mean, it's the same size building, but it's a very different vibe inside.
It's
But
really big
uh,
inside now.
yeah. It's got 2 floors. No, it's the same relative, but like the control room's a lot bigger and the live room is smaller.
Oh,
But he made it lively by having cement floor and so there's like some acoustical panels and stuff. It's cool in there, but it's not the dumpy weird place it was before. It's actually quite fancy. But yeah, I mean, it's still a trip to me to go in there, and I don't do it much, but you think, man, I used to spend every day of my life forever and ever, hours and hours and hours and years and years and years in this room, just doing a whole bunch of different shit. It's a very nostalgic place. I'm glad it's still there, but it's a very nostalgic place for me. And but yeah, I think nothing wrong with that. Was just because it was such a formidable time in my life and maybe this city, and getting to really become close with Doug and watching him have this record that exploded for him, and I was a part of it, and the kookiness of the fake record at the end and all that kind of stuff. People knowing who I am all of a sudden, which is insane to me. And
your name checked in there. That's why I knew who you
yeah,
were, and
yeah,
that's why I
yeah,
felt like a
yeah.
fucking
That's
dipshit
me
for liking
saying it's saying it's me here. But and
Whose
then
idea was that? Was that your idea,
Doug's,
or
he
to do
came
the?
he came yeah, the fake record at the end. He came into the studio, uh and he says, we've got drum set up and bass set up, and he put his Fender Twin in this one little corner over this little area, kind of by the back door. And I was like miking it and all stuff. He's, oh, don't even worry about my guitar. I'm not going to keep any of that shit. I'm just going to guide these guys through the takes, and then I'm going to overdub everything. And I was like, oh, okay, I've never done that before. So we recorded super quiet so he wouldn't fuck up and bleed upon the tracks or whatever. And then he goes, oh, and then after we're done with the record, then we're going to record another record. And I was like, what? We're doing 2 records? Like, that's insane. Like, you don't have time to do 2 records. He's like, oh no, it's like a fake K-Tel style record that I want to do at the end of this thing. I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay. And so we recorded all the basic tracks for the songs were on the record, and then we recorded the fake record in these little snippets that he was, as far as I know, he was making up on the spot.
Right.
And it was funny as hell. And
They're pretty great and
they're
funny.
pretty hilarious, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I remember John Goodmanson coming into, because this is John and Stu's place. He came in because the control room side door or door is behind you, and if you're at the desk, the board's right behind you. So he walks in, and he's like, we're doing like, kick you in the head, I'm gonna kick you in the head, I'm gonna kick you in the head, I'm gonna kick you in the head. He goes, okay, next song, And there's like, I didn't know he was there. And after like 2 of these fake songs go by, he goes, what the fuck are you guys doing? And I look at him and I go, we're making the next month's Spill record. And he goes, oh, like, well, I'm not doing that. Like, woo, okay. But
Good.
that was all,
Hey, good luck.
yeah, that's great record, guys. Yeah, I'm just gonna grab
I love
this.
your sound.
Yeah, I'm gonna get this cassette cleaner and leave. But yeah, that was all Doug's idea.
How much time? I mean, that album has a real magic to it.
Mm.
It's got a magic and a charm to it.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
there's nothing that sounds more like, I guess it was that 94 or 95
94.
to me than that record.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was, how many years went by before the next record? Was it Perfect from now on?
I
Was
think
it next record?
recorded. Yeah, next one was Perfect for Now, and he got signed to Warner Brothers. Oh well, we did an EP between that, Caustic Resin, Built to Spill split EP thing. But the next full album was we got signed to Warner Brothers, and that was recorded in '96, and I guess it came out in '97. So then, with except for this EP in the middle, yeah, it's been almost 3 years.
It felt like there was such a huge amount of growth, like musically and sonically. Also, the
Yeah,
recording.
right.
It was like, oh wow,
Yeah,
this is like now all of a sudden this music is represented like this.
yeah, right.
Uh, what did you work on between those times, and was that a symptom of having more budget or more experience or
Oh,
both?
both. I'm sure. Certainly more budget. But yeah, I was doing. God, what did up record stuff. I did. I mean, when I met Chris officially and started doing things for Up Records, and then did some Mouse and Built Spill, like the earlier stuff. I did a lot of stuff for that label in between. Like I did 764 Hero, and he was head of Hush Harbor before that. And, oh yeah, Incredible Forces Junior. There's all these different bands are on Up Records, and some Sub Pop stuff, I guess, as well in that time frame. But just local bands, man, and more of them. Like I got way busier, and more stuff was coming my way, and more people asked me to work with them, but still, I guess primarily local artists. And then yeah, Doug got signed, and we had way more time and way more money and way more everything to dive into making a major label record, which I had not done at all to that point. So
Is 764 John still making music?
he has a band called Sun Breaks, I think they're called. I'm not fucking that up. But my friend James Van Leuven, who was in a band called Automaton Adventure Series, is a drummer, and they're kind of dad guys. Yeah, they're great guys, but it's cool music, and they have, I guess, a full length on Suicide Squeeze. But Sunbreaks is the band, so he does it. He's a full time dad, as is James, the other guy in the band. So they still do music, and he still writes, and they still put stuff out. Not much. I don't know if they've ever toured, but they played shows here and there. But yeah, he's still doing stuff. He's still doing things around town.
Before I worked at the Lighthouse, I worked in the Pike Place Market,
Oh,
and John worked in the
yeah,
Pike Place
you're
Market
right. I remember that.
above me, directly above
Oh,
me.
at that can no, at the what was that
He worked at
restaurant?
a very fancy.
Shay.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember this.
He worked at Shay Shay, and so he had like a real grunt job there, and I was selling
Yeah,
produce, and we would
right.
talk about music. I talked about, and Derek from the Murder City Devils was working
Yeah,
at the Lusty Lady around the corner,
yeah, of
and
course. Yeah, of course.
so you know, otherwise I'd have never like I just wasn't a cool kid. I would have never seen the Murder City Devils play
Right,
in front of 25 people.
right.
I would have never
Yeah, if you didn't know
seen
those
a
guys.
Harbor
Yeah,
and been introduced to Sunny Day.
right. Totally.
But uh, I think John was recording his first 764 Hero stuff. I think he was recording with you, and
Maybe.
he came back. He was so excited because I think it was his first like real
Right,
recording
right,
experience. He was
right.
like, "We double tracked the vocals. That's what the Beatles did," he said.
That's
And he
cool.
had this look on his face like,
Yeah, I did something the Beatles did.
"We didn't like the Beatles." And I was like,
Wow,
"You mean you sang it twice?" And he's like, "Yeah."
wow, that's cool.
It never occurred to me
Right,
that that's what you would do in a recording.
right. Yeah,
Uh,
double.
they didn't have YouTube videos about how things were done. There was no Rick
Yeah,
Beato, and I mean
yeah.
there was, but he didn't have YouTube either.
Right. Yeah, I learned that stuff from watching Jack and
Right.
those guys doubling choruses and things like that. Whereas I was like, oh, whoa, that just sounds bigger. And then him guiding performances probably was one of the biggest things. Like somebody would sing it once, maybe twice, or halfway through and cough and then punch and do the other half. I'm like, that's done. Sounds great. That guy sounds awesome. And that Jack would go, okay, so on the first verse, you're out of breath here and a little flat on the entrance of the chorus. And I'd be like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, it sounded cool. And I'm just sitting there observing. And then it took a good, I don't know, a few times around of this to go, oh, it is different. And I guess it wasn't like so off that it was fucked up, but it was off until I heard it correct. I was like, oh, it is better that way. And then same with doubling, it's like watching him have this guy double vocals. I'm like, that sounds cool. And then he's like, okay, you're off your syllables here. I'm like, oh, I guess he was off with his syllables there. Well, okay, noted. And so that was those things I learned from those guys.
How do you decide aesthetically when something is cool off and when it is not uncool off? Because
There's a difference, yeah. I don't know. I think it's just you have to. It's in the moment things. Sometimes it just depends on how that man or woman performed it. Like, oh man, that you get a little fucked up right there, but that's the coolest crack, fuck up, off timey little stumble that's just you can't make that up. That's emotion, and
right.
that really that maybe kind of get excited hearing it be a little bit whatever. Or if it's like that just sounds gross, dude. Like it just that makes me want to vomit hearing that no bead with that bass line or whatever the hell is happening. Like you can't do that. That's not going to make. I guess for a producer, I think the thing you're mainly there to do, besides help the artists with their songs and get all the great performances and work with their arrangements and all that, you're really this liaison between people who like music and play music and people who like music but don't play music.
Right.
And those people are the majority. We're the 1%. The 99% of the world has no idea how records are made or what makes something cool or not cool. They just want to hear it and go, this is cool. And there are people who will dive in further than that. But if you present something to them that is not digestible, like bad notes or whatever, that aren't cool versions of bad notes, they're just going to be like, ugh. And next artist, skip, especially these days.
Because
So
there are plenty of examples of bad notes that are cool.
yeah, 100%.
They exist even on like Flaming Lips albums. I mean,
Every one of them,
right,
or Jane's Addiction albums, or
right.
bad good singing. But I guess it kind of became, yeah, you had the moxie, the guts to kind of put it out there. I think that translates sometimes, and if it's like emotional enough and exciting enough and sonically cool enough, and maybe you're not trying to be a top 40 pop band, but you're just putting it out there as this, I'm a freaky weird person putting out my own music, and if it's a little, so it kind of, but Adele couldn't do it, or
Right.
whatever, Miley Cyrus or whoever is the big person at the moment. That doesn't work in that world, but in artistically weird people world, that can become ginormous music. It's more acceptable.
Right. Nick Cave gets away with it.
100%.
He's
100%.
like sounds like a drunk uncle singing karaoke, right?
Yeah,
Half
yeah,
the
exactly.
time, like
Of his own music.
ah.
Yeah. No, it's true. And then there's just certain people that they're just so good that you're like, come on, man. Like you don't. I know you're tired of singing, but you can sing that better. And like James Mercer from the Shins or Robin Pecknold or somebody from the Fleet Foxes, somebody who's just like, here's a really fucking good singer. And to have this be not great when every single thing or every note you sing on the rest of the song and the rest of this album is fucking amazing, to have something be it just kind of, it showcases it's just bad, you shouldn't do that, and that's going to stand out so heavily in this realm of music that we're giving to the world, that you just kind of can't allow it. And most of the time people are like responsive to that, and want to do the right thing or whatever it is, even if they're exhausted and sick of recording or whatever the hell the day is.
There was a movement around that time, like 2000, like Shins, Fleet Foxes, Band of Horses, bands with men who could sing high.
Yeah, really high, very loud and clear. Yeah,
And like that did not exist in through the 90s, right?
that
It
doesn't
was
seem
like,
nothing I remember.
and fucking cool.
Yeah, I agree. Really clear
Yeah.
bell like, I think James Mercer. I mean, there's a lot of great singers I worked with, but James is one of the truly gifted. Has it, probably born with it, ability just to control himself. And he doesn't. I would say he was like not taking care of himself, but he wasn't like, he would warm up and stuff. But he sang all the time. He was always just singing, like in the tour van or in the going to get coffee. He was just always doing it. It's like he was crafting. He was really good at it, and that was always something really exciting, just to watch somebody just, fuck, man, you're murdering. This is so amazing. Like it's just so cool to watch this person go out there and control this performance in such a amazing way that wow, fuck, that's, that sounds so incredible that it's undeniable that people are going to like this. That was always
When
an
you say
exciting.
he was like always singing, was he working on ideas like melodies and ideas just out
That
loud?
and just singing, he'll just like sing a song that he had in his head, or I don't know, whatever a joke song, or whatever, a commercial that he thought was funny, or another person's song, or his own little thing, whatever it was. But he just sang a lot. He just kind of was always kind of working on it, whether it was subconscious or intentional or whatever. He just would sing a lot. And that's something I've always instilled in people that I work on with records. And they'll say, "Oh, how come such and such person's vocals are so great?" I go, "Because they work at it.
Because
They
they're great.
practice. They're great, but they work at it. They are constantly singing and writing. Josh Tillman, like or not like Father John Misty, is a very fucking good singer. And he would sing all the fucking time, playing guitar, making up goofy songs, whatever the hell he was doing. But he was working on just singing, and kind of always in that muscle memory of control, where some guys, I think they're just going to kind of jump into it. And it's hard. Recording a microphone in the studio is fucking hard. And so to be able to do it with conviction, and goes past the recording to through the audience, the listeners or the audience or whatever, that takes a lot of time and practice and
You worked
energy.
on his Fear Fun album?
Yeah, I worked on the first two records,
Oh, okay.
mostly as mixing, but uh, but yeah,
I think that they're great.
I agree.
Sometimes watching the performances was challenging for me.
Especially in the early days.
Yeah, and I get it, I guess.
Sure, sure.
It was I guess who's that band that God, Christine is so into it, and I'm just not into it. Who's the guy that was like a Bowie collaborator? Jesus Christ, come on. Eno's band. What was Eno's band?
I mean, Roxy Music.
Roxy Music. Like the
Oh, you
performance
mean that
had like
the kind of
had a
showmanship, schmarmy kind of rock and roll guy?
stage art, but like bohemian,
Right, right.
post like
Like
between,
Brian Ferry. I mean,
yeah, a little bit,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But bearded.
Yeah. It was showy, and I understand why he was doing it. Kind of wasn't my thing, but I understand why he was doing it.
It,
He was
the
in Fleet.
music isn't. I can't even get enough of it. I think it's
I agree, especially. I mean, I only worked on the first few records, but those are also the ones I actually do like the most. Not because I worked on them, but I actually just think they're the coolest ones. Um, just because it was kind of new, I guess, or maybe
it's okay to like him the best because you worked on it.
yeah, I guess so. But so he was in Fleet Foxes, which I knew wasn't going to go well, but it went as it did, and
But
and
he was already an artist,
he had
a
like
solo
7 albums
artist.
out before that. Yeah, he had many albums. He probably has more albums than any person I personally know as a friend of mine. He's got like 16 albums or something, 15 albums, something like that. But yeah, the Jay Tillman stuff that he did was not my cup of tea. It was this little woe is me-ish kind of sappy singer songwriter. I mean, there was some good tunes in there, but I didn't really. He spent no time on them. He busted them out in a couple of days and put them out and do another one next 6 months later, and that was fine. He's a writer, and I really admire writers more than I admire anything else. People who write music constantly, I think that's inspirational. And I think you don't have to be an amazing musician to be able to be a great writer. But I really respected that. And so, I knew he wasn't going to be content being a drummer or Fleet Foxes or singing other people's songs or whatever. And Robin and him, as far as his personalities, are very different. The writing was on the wall that at some point in time he was going to quit this band. And one day we were in the studio, and he had made a record with Steve Albini, ironically, for Jay Tillman, and he did, and he played it for me, and it was fine. I had like drum machines and stuff, and it was kind of his music, but with like, it sounded like a Steve Albini record, but with Josh songs. It was fine. It was cool, and it still didn't like float my boat necessarily. But he didn't really push the issue. And one day Robin from Fleet Foxes went to lunch or whatever, and me and Josh stayed behind. It was a latter process of recording Help Us Blues. And he's like, "Hey, you want to hear my new songs? They're not boring." And got a good chuckle. And he played them for me. And I'm like, "Josh," and this is the Fear Fun demos. I'm like, "Josh, this is what you should be doing. This is fucking great. Like, sing loud, sing open, don't, hushy, whispery stuff that he'd done before. Like, you're good at this. And he's like, I just feel like I sound like I'm a religious person when I'm singing. And I think, well, just maybe drop the vibrato and just sing loud. Oh,
Right.
okay. And so he went down to LA and recorded with Jonathan Wilson and moved to LA actually, but he was still in Fleet Foxes. And he came back and he's like, I have this record. I think it sounds kind of weird, but I think the songs are good. And he played it to me, and I was like, Josh, this sounds fucking terrible. They're horrible. Nothing against Jonathan Wilson, but the engineer that they worked with phoned it in a lot of different ways. And I was like, well, man, I think these are fucking great. And I think these songs are super cool, like Nancy from Now On and Hollywood Forever. And I think these are fucking cool as shit. And let me talk to Sub Pop. Maybe I can get you signed to Sub Pop, and I'll mix it for you, and we'll make it happen. And surprising, that was a hard thing to do. Sub Pop didn't really want to do it. They kind of had an issue with, a guy who probably was going to quit their biggest band at the time, Fleet Foxes, and they didn't really want to put a side project thing. And there's a lot of politics, and some people didn't like his antics, and whatever.
Right.
But they ultimately voted yes, and we did it. What's that?
Pretty good decision.
I would agree so. But we worked on it for a long time, and it was hard because it wasn't recorded very well. Mixing other people's music is difficult when it's something you like, why did they do this? Or I can only make this be so big by so many tricks or whatever. But we worked really hard on it, and I just loved it. I thought it was
Did you retrack anything?
We did not retrack anything. We did different comps of some vocals. We did some different balances of some vocals that he had done that were kind of, again, he's like, I didn't realize I was that flat. Like, I wish somebody would have said, dude, you're flat right there. So we had to do some, finding other tracks and stuff that I, didn't know where they were, and,
Sure.
other kind of technical crap. But yeah, so we worked on the thing for a good while. Like, we mixed it for a long time. Like, man, I bet we mixed that thing for 2 weeks, maybe a bit more. A long time of mixing, because it was just a lot of, how do we make this sound fucking rad? And it's awesome, and it came out really cool. And there goes his career.
I mean, I think I feel this way about the first two records, especially. They sound like they belong aside all of the sort of the great LA songwriters of the 70s.
No, I think that was his intent. Yeah, I totally agree.
And it's
thank you, but I agree on his writing. Yeah, I think if you have, I guess it all goes back to kind of what I was saying. If you have a like-mindedness before you go in the studio, like, he knew I was behind him. I helped him get signed to the label. We got some little bit of money out of this to make it work. Then there's an element of just like, okay, what can you do that will help this be the greatest thing that you think it can be, given what you have to work with, if it's just a mixing thing and if it's a production thing. And when you're on that tip with somebody, with an artist, there's a like-minded collaborative understanding that we're both here for the same reason, to make the greatest thing we can do, then this is fun. And you're really just like, the time and you spend on it doesn't matter as much as the outcome, the collaborative aspect of it, and the pat on the back at the end of the day, that that you worked really hard, that we're stoked, that there's my personal feeling that other people will be as well. The artist will always be trepidatious, because it's just, it's difficult for you putting out music, no matter what you're doing, or however you believe or don't believe in your own music. You're still putting out there to be judged. But when I'm like, man, I think this is going to be a big record, and I really think this is going to do super well, and I think this is important, I'm glad to be a part of it, and that aspect of collaborative work makes for really good records, I think. And I thought that sounds maybe a little cliche or something, but it's totally true. And
a lot of cliches are true. That's how they become
very true. But and I've been very fortunate that I've had those experiences from early on with Bill Spill and maybe Modest Mouse and other aspects of earlier 90s bands, onwards to the Shins, onward to the Band of Horses, and onward to the Fleet Foxes, onward to all those bands I helped get signed to Sub Pop or other avenues to make records. And I was fortunate that, like with Band of Horses, I was fortunate that I asked them to give us more money, and more than they were comfortable doing. And then I basically said, hey, just let me do this. I think this is going to be phenomenally cool. It just kind of let me do it. And they did it. And they're like, okay, well, 100%. But that also collaborative aspect of having a label or an avenue to get finances to allow you to make records and have someone believe in you to do that. which still happens to this day in different avenues, but with sub pop, especially at that time, was really important for all of us, not just me, but for
It's good
them
to
as a
have
label.
someone trust you, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And have it go, hey, just let me do this thing. It's going to be okay. Trust that I know what I'm talking about. And I've got your back and I've got the artist back, and it's going to be a cool thing. And, we did that with over and over again, the Shins and Band of Horses and Father John Misty and Fleet Foxes. And there was a time period that was happening a lot for me in this town. And that was again, another exciting time. 10 years after Built to Spill, we were doing it in a different capacity.
Right.
I guess that kept me here as well,
Let me ask you
as a
this. It might pain you to answer this question, but what is more important, uh, sonic quality or a good performance?
good performance. I think just like a good song, you can have a killer sounding horrible record. Who cares if it sounds good if the songs are dumb? Who cares if it sounds good if the person singing is stupid or comically or sarcastically or whatever? So I think if you have to have great performances on top. The first thing is great songs and then performances. So, in the early records I did, especially, man, there wasn't a whole lot of overdubs because I was working so hard on performances, and that was eating up a lot of our time. So it wasn't about the bells and whistles, about the foundation. So that was way more important to me, that you're singing the fuck out of this. And if we have to punch every damn word, which we did on some Band of Horses songs, then we're going to do that. And you can curse my name and tell me I'm being this and that and over dramatic or too picky or whatever, all you want. To me, I think that how this translates to the outside of our little cubicle that we're recording in is what matters. And so if you have those killer performances, I think you can get away with maybe, not having the best sounding record. But
Without throwing anyone under the bus, I would not ask you to throw anyone under the bus, but you've probably had some tense moments in this
yeah,
studio.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Have,
I've had shouting matches.
have they always resolved once the recording was over? And
No,
no,
no. I've had some people that we're probably not going to talk to each other ever again, but that would be a record that it just went that way. But I'm also very fortunate that I worked with a lot of the same artists multiple times,
right.
and had arguments with them in those time frames. I've had people get upset at me with being too hard on them, or what they felt was too hard on them, or pushing them to an uncomfortable place in the studio, and then being like, kind of fuck you, and hold a grudge against me, and maybe talk crap about me to their buddies after at the bar or whatever. But all of those guys who I ended up working with again, every one of them apologized, and a lot of them apologized maybe after they went on to produce one of their friends' music, and had to go, oh fuck, Phil was right. It's really hard to tell somebody that what they're doing is shitty, and they do it again, but that's your job. So all of them realized, oh, he wasn't being an asshole. He was actually helping me. And so that was nice to have people come back around and say nice things like that.
It's a hard job.
It can be, yeah. It can be a hard job with your friends.
Right.
Yeah, I've had people, most of the bands I worked with became friends of mine in some capacities, good friends, some of them. And it's hard to tell your buddy, and that isn't cool for XYZ reasons, and have them understand the reasons you're doing it isn't just your friend, it's because you're the third party guy. You're the guy supposed to be helping translate this to everybody. And that can be difficult, but that hasn't happened in a long ass time. That was more of our younger year kind of things that would happen then. Yeah.
Right. When was the last time you were on the road?
Oh boy, man, I did a short little run down the coast with the Mercy Devils when they reunited officially for the first time in 2010. But that was cushy as shit. We flew to every show, and it was only like six shows or something like that.
Didn't know they could get that kind of guarantee.
Yeah. And it was fun as hell because I wasn't a fan of Mercy Devils when they were a band, really at all. I knew the guys, but it wasn't. They were like cha-cha click, and I wasn't a part of that at all. But maybe
that's a fun group of guys. You worked on their live album, yeah?
Yeah, they're lovely. Yeah, they're the greatest. I love those guys. Every one of them. They're just the best. But at the time when they were an actual band, I mean, I knew them and we were friendly, but I wasn't a big fan of their music. But Anyway, so I did that, but that didn't really count as a full tour. The last full tour I did, so I did a bunch of touring with Built Spill and some, West Coast things with Moss Mouse and the Shins and stuff. But the last long tour I did was with the Shins in Europe, I guess. That would have been 2004. Festival tour kind of thing for Shoots Too Narrow. That was super fun. The first tour I did with those guys was right when Shoots Too Narrow came out. And we had just, I used to do sound with bands that I just did a record for. So to work with those guys is like super easy as fuck to do sound for. They sound really good. But we went to Europe and they had not toured Europe at all on their first album. So they get there as this band that kind of had a buzz, but pretty grassroots at that point. We played a show in London at a place called Water Rats, which is like 200 capacity maybe, and I don't think we sold it out. And the record came out over there. Garden State came out over there, the movie. And by the end of this tour, which is I think 3 weeks or a month long, we had added on a sold out show at Shepherd's Bush Empire, which is
it'll change your life.
But it was the funnest thing watching that happen to your buddies, because they just were absolutely through the roof. They were just went from media darling kind of guys kind of know about him to being like, you just sold out a 2,000 capacity venue in London from not selling out 200 people a month prior. So
I remember when they played the Offramp.
Oh yeah, totally.
Whatever it was called then.
Yeah, right. Of course. No, remember it was Sub-Zero?
I remember when it was called every one of the versions.
I worked at the Offramp.
Did you really?
Yeah, that's how I met Mr. John Roderick.
I was gonna say, did you have the misfortune of working with John Roderick?
I did. You worked the door.
I'm probably Donnie. Was Donnie Paycheck working there then too? From Zeke? Don Hale, was he working there?
So he might have been. I don't know. I don't really know him that well, anyways. But yeah, I was a monitor guy, dude. The sound guy, monitor dude. I was underage too.
What? Oh man, what years were you doing monitors there?
When I moved here, early 91 until about a year and a half, I was doing monitors there. Yeah, I mean, big cross paths. Yeah. I was underage. I had moved here from Bremerton. I had my older brother's ID. I was 19 years old. My older brother's 2 years older than me. So I had his ID. We both had long hair. I said, give me your ID and I'll buy you a new one, replacement, whatever that is, $10 or whatever. So he gave me his ID because you're looking face forward, you're not turning to the side, you're 21. And that was how I got into shows. And I looked enough like my older brother. And my friend Melissa worked in monitors at the Offramp. And she's, oh, you should just come in with me one day when I do sound check. I'm like, all right. So I walk in, showed my ID to one John Roderick, who just went, oh, cool. And they never asked for it again. She decided to go to Alaska to go fishing, and I took the job. So I became the monitor guy at the Offramp and I got paid cash. So I was like, they don't have to know how old I am. So I'm getting like drinks and seeing like Nirvana and Mudhoney and all these things happening. I thought it was the coolest shit ever. And
a lot of important bands came through. I mean, like Smashing Pumpkins played there.
I just told this story not too long ago. I was this band called, remember Sweetwater?
Of course. Sweetwater? They're still around.
I know. I'm going to mix their new record.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in like 2 weeks.
That's incredible.
Yeah, they're lovely. They're great. Adam the Singers, I've known him forever. Such a good dude. Anyways, so they opened. And we were talking about this. I'm like, so you guys remember this show that you played? They were like Smashing Pumpkins' first tour in Seattle. Yeah. And this band, he goes, do you remember the band that played in the middle? And they go, yeah, Circle of Soul. I'm like, yep, Circle of Soul, like total Venice Beach muscle guys. Like they had a conga player. They're fucking terrible. Anyway, so in those days, in those days at the Offramp, they would oversell the fucking place, like very illegally. It was so off the radar. No one went down East Lake Avenue over there, and just no one cared. So they just way oversell it. And so Smashing Pumpkins, big fucking band, every indie darlings coming through on their first tour. I don't know how many people could even fit in that place, but there's double as many as there should be.
For people who are listening that don't know, the capacity of that room is probably 450.
Yeah, probably 450. I wouldn't be surprised if there was 900 people inside there. It was dangerously oversold.
I saw Iron Maiden in that room.
You did?
Yes.
Wow,
and there were probably about that many people in there.
Yeah, I saw the Zombies in that room.
I did too.
With nobody in there.
I was there.
Yeah, there was like 200 people there, maybe.
It was fucking criminal.
Criminal, and they were great. Colin Blunstone was great, sounded great. Anyway, so I'm at the board. Sound guys up here. This guy Wayne, who was a sound guy. So I'm at the board, and they used to be like little signals, little light signals, because you couldn't get to and from to tell each other that we didn't have intercoms or anything like that. So like a flash meant, hey, let them know this is the last song. 2 flashes means like, dude, get them off stage. 3 flashes means I don't know what it means. And then if you get a red flash, it means you have to turn their monitors off. So, and I never experienced this before. I've never had to make the stage go dark. I never had to do that before. So these guys are doing their bullshit, and the crowd's like, I don't care, go off, get off stage. And I killed their monitors. And the singer looked at me and he's like, motherfucker. And they finish their thing. He runs over and punches me right in the face. And I fall off the monitor desk and I fall onto the ground. And behind me is the women's bathroom. So I run in there and all these people are freaking out. I'm gushing blood. I'm like, oh my fucking God. And run in there and, stuff a bunch of toilet paper in my mouth and my nose and go back out. And they're basically throwing these guys, that little long hallway behind the stage. They're like towards the back alley, whatever. They're just like tossing their shit up. They're like, get out, you're out. No money for you. Fuck you all. And they throw them out. And so that kind of clears up and whatever. And I'm just like, fuck. And my nose is all full. I'm sweaty. And so Smashing Pumpkins take the stage, and it's just motherfucking mayhem, like a cascade of people flying on the stage, and there's like maybe one stage bouncer. Like it's just fucking mayhem. So like 2 or 3 songs go by, and Billy Corgan walks up to this guy with his frizzy long hair and his nose is all bloody, and so he goes, I'll give you $100 if you sit in front of me and literally hold the wedge so that it doesn't hit me in the face, the microphone, and then hit my face. So he gave me $100. I'm sitting there. We didn't do after the show. He did give me $100. I'm sitting on the stage holding the fucking monitor while like voices blasting at my fucking face. And
oh, you're right in front of the monitor.
Sweaty people. Yeah, his vocal monitor is literally right in front of me, and I'm just holding it for the entire show with a bloody, gnarly, stuffed up toilet paper nose and sweaty people cascading over me. And he gave me $100 at the end of the show.
That band was at the height of their powers, arguably at the height of their powers right then. Yeah. Fucking killer band, but
they were slaying it.
To have your face sort of pummeled with his voice would,
I know I had shitty foam earpieces in, but it was just crushing me. Just like, oh, it's so loud. And I remember he had this crappy Alesis 16 pedal controller thing that I kept hitting, and he kept kind of kicking me like hey, you punk ass little shit. Like, I know I'm giving you $100 and your fucking nose is broken and I'm sweating, and could you stop with the fucking whatever, not put it on my my triplet delay on.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that was my time at the
Offramp. Wow.
Yeah.
That was a real magic time.
Yeah, it was fun as hell.
Sweetwater was the first band that I saw perform live when I moved to Seattle.
Really? Wow.
I saw Sweetwater and Lazy Susan play at the Rock Candy. I was so excited. I was in the big city.
Yeah.
I was seeing a rock
and roll show. You got a drink in your hand. You're living it, bro. That's exactly how I felt. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I'm like, I'm living in this fucking city, and like cool artistic shit's happening around me, and like look all the stuff I gotta meet, and it was that. I mean, yeah, it was fun. And I think in all of that, if I had those, for me, I thought it was gonna be super hard to jump into the music world, not knowing fucking anybody, but having no idea that city at that time was fucking tiny. Everybody knew everybody, and people were mostly pretty cool about, yeah, come on for the ride. It was before it became jaded, Right. So it was a little bit more like, yeah, man, we're in this weird city. Who gives a shit? It's 1990. Nothing's happening here. There's some cool stuff and some bands on major labels, but so it's fine. It's cool. There's a lot of cool shit going on. So had that been difficult for me, I probably would have moved away and had a completely different trajectory in my life. But because it was fun and exciting and interesting and was accepting. And I did get a chance to do random shit like Offramp and work with Jack, and the stuff that happened pretty quickly just by being open to doing it, made it a really special place to stay. And one of the reasons, and the reason why I stayed.
I wish that I had not embraced the idea that um, ambition, like, I wish that I would have embraced the idea that ambition was a great thing
Yeah, yeah,
to pursue rather
yeah,
than
yeah,
resist.
yeah, yeah. Being embarrassed by it or thinking that you're being lame by having aspirations of grandeur, whatever the fuck you want to look at it. I think
Because as much fun as you've had, you've also worked really hard.
work my ass
And
off.
and when you've worked, you're very focused. You have to be focused. You have to be
Yeah,
on a schedule.
yeah.
You can't fuck around.
I think when you start making records that become somewhat successful, even before that, you realize it's not your money. It's not you're there doing it. You're the boss, but you're doing it on everybody else's time and everybody else's money, and you're also getting paid. So you're the boss who can get fired at any time. So
Right.
you do due diligence and you pay attention and you do right by the people you're there for, and by sticking by that motto or credo or whatever I want to look at through all these years has and staying true to the idea that I'm here to make the best fucking thing I possibly can do. And by not saying that to the artist that this is why it's not that, I'm just an engineer. And there's nothing wrong with being just an engineer. But if you want to help guide something, you have to have those moments of kind of sticky situations. And if you don't have those moments, then you're not helping the product get better. And you're not making your music better or your art better and their music better. And it just doesn't, that's the point. If you don't say, man, if you don't, I think you're doing it this way is making the song worse. I think we should try it this way. Have them try it your way, do a good job at it, see the outcome being better, and going, aha, this person that I respect actually is really on my side, and that's something I should pay attention to. Those moments of enlightenment for everybody just makes it fucking fun. So I still get that, which is cool.
You gotta just throw down the gauntlet right on the first day in the studio. Give me
Well,
you just like, hey, can I hear the kick drum? Fuck you!
let's start
Get it?
over.
Yeah.
No, I guess it's yeah. I'm lucky now that I have all my own stuff. So if someone has something that doesn't sound cool, and I luckily have the money to get a drum tech, I used to use my own drum kit and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I
Have
think
you been able to work through COVID, and how have you navigated that?
I didn't at first. I had two records that were supposed to happen right when it shut down, right in March. Um, didn't know it at the time, but my wife got pregnant right when the shutdown happened in the end of March. But that we didn't know that for a little bit. But yeah, I didn't initially because we couldn't be in the same space together. So I did some.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. But yeah, I did some mixing to kind of buy some time because I do a lot of satellite remote mixing, where someone from England or something sends me tracks and I mix it. So that's something you could do over the internet and emailing and stuff. But wasn't until the virus chilled out here, and we're lucky Seattle was very proactive in that, and the people that we're talking to are proactive about getting tested and staying distanced and all that stuff. So we had to agree that if you're going to come here when the virus is chilled out, which is around end of August of 2020, then you're going to show up, you're going to get tested right when you show up. If you have to make sure you're negative, blah, 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 we'll go in with all the protocols and you do that stuff. And it was fine. It was totally good. And, Seattle was mostly still shut down for quite a while. And it's like, if the bar opens up, man, you can go get a beer. Just don't. If you want a beer, just go to the grocery store and take it back to your Airbnb and have a beer at your house. And yeah, I think most of those people were honest about that and took it seriously. And so that made it okay. So actually last year, around August until I went on paternity leave, our son was born in the end of December. So after Thanksgiving, I didn't work at all just to be around.
Wait a minute. When's your son's birthday?
Yeah, December 28th.
Yes.
Is that your birthday?
Yes.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. You guys said his 9-month birthday was yesterday.
If you would have known, you could have named your son Mike Squires Eck.
Mike Squires Act, yeah. And what if we did?
I mean, I'm honored.
You're welcome. No, his name is Sam. But yeah, December 28th. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, I ended up having a lot of people had a bad time and it wasn't easy having a pregnant wife through a pandemic, and then also having giving birth and stuff during the pandemic. But financially and job wise, it actually was pretty okay, shockingly, because I did a records an artist from New York, and then a band from Austin, Texas, and they all flew here and worked on it. It was cool, and was on paternity leave until end of March of this year when I did a record for an artist called goes by Siml, Syml, and his other records are primarily electronically driven or based, I guess. And this one is, session players. We had full band, and he plays tons and tons of guitar on it. It's kind of a big folky pop rock record, and it was a blast to work on. So did that, and it was all right. So now that we have
I'm gonna let you go soon. I know you have to go pick up your son.
soonish, but yeah.
Um, do you have a go-to studio that you work at in Seattle? And do you ever travel
I
to
wish.
work with a band?
I
And
wish. Yeah, I miss traveling for records. Budgets are just too small, and it can be cheaper. I've been made records in this city for 31 years, and I still do some stuff at Avast, but not as much as I certainly used to. I think my main tracking space these days has been Studio Litho, Stone Studio.
pretty good
Just
spot.
yeah, and he just gives it to me really fucking cheap. I've known Stone forever, and he's just, he's in a little band called Pearl Jam, so he's not looking to make money off his studio. He just
Right.
doesn't want to lose money off his studio, so he doesn't charge anything really. And location's great, so I do a lot of stuff there. And the new Studio X, which is
Where's that?
well, it's on Capitol Hill. It's on 13th and Olive in a church. You know that row of I guess what's that? I guess Pike. Then you on 13th, and you kind of go north, and then there's a row of churches. Like there's a Greek church and
Yeah,
like the first one, which I think
it's
was
like an
Olive.
Orthodox church with the
Yes,
whole the
yes.
choirs and
And
everything.
that's that road where there's all these random churches. The very first one is a studio, which is Studio X, which is after Bad Animals closed downtown.
Yeah.
And then Studio X was down there, and then that closed. John Nordstrom or whoever the Nordstrom that owned it sold it. So it's getting demolished. Reed, the manager, and this guy, Mike, who I'm forgetting his last name, he used to own Triad Studios in Redmond, joined forces, and he owned this building on Capitol Hill, and that's where the studio is. And it's sick. It's so cool. So that's where I did basic tracking for that similar record, was up there. So that's kind of my new go-to, because it's this beautiful church on Capitol Hill that has all those amazing vintage gear and tube mics and all the stuff that this one guy owns, and then Studio X had together. So it's tons of amazing stuff, and it just sounds so cool.
Did you ever record at that Studio X Bad Animals?
I mixed there once. It was just out of my price range for so long, and if I knew I could get a deal, I didn't take it up on it. I mean, I know guys who ended up working there the last 10 years of that studio that were paying totally fair prices, but
I
I
made
was
a record there, and it was like I felt,
yeah,
it's a
roll.
great place to go make a record and feel special.
Yeah. And that was
Like,
no, it's true, and that stuff matters. You want to feel like you're, it's not just some hey, cool dude. Like they were nice about it. It was professional, not outside of Seattle vibe. So,
you can make an incredible record in the basement, but if you are going to a studio every day that looks like a studio that you grew up seeing in the movies,
yeah, totally. It's
it
different.
you maybe approach it a little bit different, at
Yeah.
least mentally, or
No, I think that's totally understandable. I think there's nothing wrong with recording studios anywhere, or recording records anywhere, closets, basements, anywhere. Does it, as long as it sounds killer, great. But there is a very specific thing that happens when you go to a special space that has a special vibe, whatever you want to call, that you're maybe paying money for. There's an aspect of getting there and having to be good, not just that we can take a break anytime we want. That forces cool creativity, and I think that's what studios are important for. And so when you have a new one in this city, which you've been making records in for 31 years, and there's a new space, you're like, this is fucking cool. And people around you in the band, it sounds fucking amazing. I've never heard drums in this city sound like this. It's exciting. So that's kind of my new places.
you know Joe Reinecke, probably, yeah.
He's building a new studio.
Have you been over there to see it?
I just watched him on Instagram.
It is
Sure.
fucking bananas, man. It is.
Joe Bananas.
Joe is a bananas kind of guy. Yeah, I know Joe very.
He's a very good bananas guy.
I've done a lot of miles in a van with that
I bet
fella.
you have. I bet you have.
And I love Joe. Like he's like
He's
my
great.
brother. I
Yeah.
saw his studio in its sort of infant, maybe teen-aged form,
Mhm.
um, a couple weeks ago when I was in Seattle a few weeks ago, and it's really cool. You should.
Yeah, yeah.
Go there.
I keep meaning now that we my son has a nanny and I'm not just watching him every day. I plan on doing. I texted him about that. Like I'd love to come see it and to see what's going on. And you know, that's one of my list of things to do for sure because it looks cool. And I just love that there's still. I don't own a studio. I've never really wanted to own a studio. I probably very soon will be probably building some sort of mixed facility because it's important. It just makes no sense not to. But but I never really wanted to have a space. I just never wanted the overhead of it all. I never wanted to. I always wanted to be able to, the ability to leave and go anywhere I wanted to, as much as that would allow me to do so. But I like that there's still people like Joe who will build a fucking studio in Normandy Park and just go for it. Like,
I
dude,
mean,
do it.
not even find a building,
Yeah,
build a
build it
building.
from
Like
the
it's
ground up. Yeah,
really
I think
ambitious.
yeah, clear the land, man. Lay down the slab. I think that's awesome. I love that. I love that weird people do that.
They even milled some of the wood that they
Yes, they did.
the trees that they
They
cut
had
down.
to by law, I think.
Is that right?
No, I'm just
It
joking.
was it because of their artisanal ethics?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if they wanted the card on the studio that said this is an artisanal space, they had to mill. You know, those guys, those artisanal guys, they play hardball, man.
Oh, for sure, man.
No, I think that's cool. I think it's cool that I think it's cool that Chris Walla took that dumpy little old reciprocal falling apart triangle building and put a ton of money into it and preserve this place that probably didn't need it deserve to be preserved, at least structure wise. But
No,
you know,
that place
yeah,
looks like
it was
a
a total
fan.
yeah, you
You
could
could have
literally
set
fall
up a
over.
fan
Yeah,
outside.
yeah, falling over. But I like that he did that. You know, it's preservation of the craft and the space. And even though it's different, it would have been knocked down if he didn't. So it's still that same little weird building that I made records in, that huge life-changing records for the world were made in. And the fact that it still exists that in this dumb little town on that one little random busy ass road is important shit. And I think that's cool that people do that.
I think it is. A lot of great records have been made there, and fuck, Bleach isn't even the greatest record that's made there.
Well, it's probably the biggest selling one, and that's
Sure.
but that's yeah. But the point is, like, that was life changing to me. I love that record, and that was a big deal. Like, you know, that was a transitional album for me from Metallica to other things. You know, like, oh, there's a heavy band doing pop songs. I like this. Or this is a band that has songs that sound like all the halftime bridges of Slayer tunes. You know, like, oh, okay, I dig this. You know, like, cool. Sign me up. So, you know, to you know, for me, this town still has those moments of like, oh yeah, there's a reason why cool shit has happened here, because there's weird, cool people do shit here, and maybe less so than there was back when, you know, we were younger and, you know, the city was cheaper. But it's still a pretty cool place, and the Northwest is still has a cool vibe.
Are there towns? I visited Pittsburgh a few years ago, and it had real Portland 1999 vibes to me,
But,
which is appealing. A
yeah,
lot of towns in Ohio feel like that to
I
me.
can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
Are there towns that I mean, I don't know if you have your finger on the
Oh,
pulse, if or
you know, I probably don't, because towns
because
and
you're
where
old.
they're made, well, they just don't matter as much. You know, you can make records so easily and throw them out to the world from anywhere. Like, it's, you know, maybe those kids have their own scene, but to know that scene or even think that there is one, so fleeting, so small. Like that maybe is a bad part about the technology to get your music out so easily, because you didn't go through the sucky part, you didn't go through the shitty part. Everybody knows about all your parts. So I don't know. I don't
When
know.
people think about globalism, they just think about
Yeah,
big national economies
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
international relations. They don't think about the fact that there's no regional music scenes anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Not like what we understood them to be. They may be in a different way, but I don't see them. And when I worked with bands from different parts of the world and this country, they rarely speak of their scenes as, oh, you haven't heard such and such band, or oh, these guys, we always play together. These shows just like didn't. matter as much to them. And a lot of those kids don't even live in the same city anymore. One kid lives in Chicago, one kid maybe lives in Detroit, or wherever the hell they happen to spread around each other, so they can converse with each other over the internet and not necessarily always in the same practice place. So
Right.
I don't know if that is a good or bad thing. It's a different thing, but it's the romanticism of scenes seem lessened in general. I think that's just kind of always going to be the case with technology spreading the word before word of mouth or whatever.
I know you didn't ask, but uh, I think you should start writing your solo record, even if it comes out in 5 years.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I think you should just
Yeah, I think I should dive in. I think it'd be
slowly
fun.
but surely tackle it.
Maybe so. Yeah. Yeah. No, it comes up in different times, so maybe we'll certainly you know records. I still make them all the time. I make less than I've ever made in my life, not just because of um, the world or my interests. It just I'm fortunate that I've had the ability to be choosy, and I don't want just to make a record just to make it and make a X amount of money. I want to make a record because I really like it, and I can make it better, or hopefully make it better, and that's my ambition. So that to have more time to maybe think about that kind of stuff is also appealing. Work on more of my own music and stuff that I've done, little things I've thought about forever that I've never really fully you know finalized the process of the thought of it. So yeah, maybe so.
I think
Thanks
you
for
should.
asking.
I think you
So
should.
how long have you? I have to ask you. How long have you lived? You live in Hudson, yeah?
We live just outside of Hudson. When people ask where do you live, we always say Hudson, and people still think that we're talking about Croton on the Hudson or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
further, way further south. We're 2 hours north on the train. We're just south of Albany.
Okay.
Very, very close to Woodstock.
Yeah. So you're close to Dreamland, the
What's
studio,
that?
the studio Dreamland.
I don't know Dreamland, but I can
Oh,
throw a rock and hit Long Pond.
okay. Yeah, Dreamland's a studio we recorded in that relative area. Not sure what town exactly it's in that we did Helplessness Blues basic tracking. It's an old church.
Oh,
Super
wow.
cool. It's right down your
Oh,
neighborhood.
yeah. No, I've heard about that spot.
Yeah, it's cool. Super cool.
It's That's maybe over like in Saugerties or something.
Maybe I can't
Uh,
remember.
Okay.
It's in that zone because I remember me and Robin drove to get like beer one day in Woodstock or something like that. So we're not that far from that area,
Yeah.
but it was fucking cool.
That Long Pond studio is pretty cool.
Is it?
Do you know that spot?
I
The
don't.
the National guys.
Oh yeah, no, huh? I've only seen photos. Yeah, I heard it's cool.
I've been in there a couple times.
Robin Pecknold told me it's really cool.
It is fucking cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
I would love to travel more. If the budgets would make sense for me to go somewhere and it wasn't cheaper for me to say, man, I can get the studio for $400 a day. Like those studios not going to be $400 a day. So
Right.
it just is, even though 5 guys are flying here and staying in an Airbnb or whatever the hell they're doing, still works out to be cheaper day rate and my not travel and all my gear and all Jim Roth from Built Spills amps, and all the stuff I can get at a drop of a hat here that I can't get those places without getting charged a lot.
Jim
Just
is
makes
Jim is your amp source in town, yeah.
good, man. Yeah, the fact that guy doesn't have some kind of climate controlled vault of all his stuff. Not that he doesn't have that, people listening. He just has so much cool shit. And I just like, yeah, dude, can I get this, and this? Oh, sure. I'll be there in 5 minutes or whatever, 10 minutes. I'll be there, and brings it by and charges me $100.
If he doesn't have one, you know that
Yeah,
you can always call Kurt Block and he's got one.
that's very true. Yeah, very true. So yeah, it's just I miss travel for records. I miss pulling up faders in rooms I barely know and being like, what's happening? And it could be wrong because that microphone I'm turning up is not the one I think it is because it's over there and I don't know how the patching works and it's all fucked up. But you get cool mistakes from that, or like, that sounds amazing, and it wasn't something you tried to do. It
Right.
doesn't happen that much because the same records I make in the same places these days, and not that makes up they're not good records, but they're not the same thrill of
The
the
surprise.
exploration. Yeah, is less. But
Right.
that's just the budget of record making, and hopefully, things like Spotify's will start paying people more money to be able to do these things a bit more, and not have to be such a struggle to figure it out. I don't see it happening anytime soon, but but
That sounds like fantasy talk to me.
it is fantasy talk. But you know, the budgets are better than they were 10 years ago. There's more
Right.
people paying for music than there were certainly 10, 15 years ago. That helps everybody. So, you know, I guess I'm somewhat hopeful that we'll be able to continue on with just more ability. So maybe we could travel a bit more to do things, because studios and spaces and mindsets make cooler records. So
I'm I resisted for a long time, and I think that people can make quality recordings at home is great,
yeah,
but it's I don't want to focus on that. I like the studio. I
that's a
like
good thing, man.
I like to play music with people,
Yeah, the
and I
same
think
space.
that
Yeah.
music is better.
Mm,
I think it's more magical, and it's
yeah. No, man.
whether people hear it, whether they consciously know it and hear it,
Right.
I think that it communicates to people
I agree.
more powerfully.
I totally agree. I'm a 100% believer that, just because you can record yourself and you're the singer songwriter and you have your buddies playing your band and whatever, and you want the ultimate control, get it. But you'll just have more fun not being the guy in charge, and just knowing you have good songs and being confident in your songs and confident the dudes rocking with you, whoever they are, doing whatever that is, in a space with people who got your back. You'll just make better art and have more fun. And you maybe don't know that until your band breaks up.
Or
But
your
it's
band kicks you out
you get kicked out.
for
Yeah.
being not the fun, for
Yeah.
being the unfun guy.
Yeah. For being that asshole that just wouldn't let me play the part I wanted to play. Yeah.
Uh, that that feels like a perfect spot for us to stop. I'm gonna kill this recording and talk to you
All right.
about bull crap on the back end
Okay.
of this.
Okay,
So
cool.
thank you
Welcome,
thank
man.
you a
Good.
lot for giving me so much time.
Yeah, man. And good to see you.
All right.
I can't remember my last one.